Okay, Jason, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Just wanted to welcome everybody here. Appreciate everybody taking their time out of a busy day to spend some time with us. And Jason, special thanks to Jason for putting together some information for us to put into this presentation and spending the time with us to talk about his staff training program. And the thought process on this is that we'd go through a presentation from Jason and spend a portion of the time on that, and then open it up to questions for him or myself, and then discussion between everybody on the call at the end if there is discussion. So, Jason, thanks for being here, and I'm going to take us to the second slide here, and then I'm going to let you take over and talk a little bit about what you're doing at Oak Hill with your staff training program. So again, thanks for being here.
Thanks, Patrick, and thanks for everyone joining us today, and thanks to Brian Smith also with GBN. The things that Golf Business Network's doing is really, for me, makes me very proud to be part of the organization. Having spent time with Patrick and Brian at the show, and they got some great things coming out, and they really do care about us as golf professionals, and they do a great job putting these things together. Part of my presentation is based on my experiences I've had at working for some of the best professionals in the country. I'm going to just name some of them. J.J. Weaver and Tony Sessa at Augusta National, Chad Parker at Eastlake Golf Club, Pete Baker at the Rim, and John Lieberger at Congressional. And then also some of this information we have received from Cameron Weave, who was at the Everglades Club and now at Champions Retreat. He had something called the Everglades University, and we kind of modeled our program here after his program. And we do call it the Oak Hill University. It is it's a way for us to give back to our staff, to train our staff, to educate our staff into becoming better golf professionals. What we do is before we bring someone in, we make sure that they're the right fit for our organization. I can't tell you how important it is to hire the right people and to have the best fit for your team. It all starts up front, and if you get people that are dedicated to improving your operation, it makes it a lot easier for you to give back to them by educating them. Going through the interview process at Oak Hill a year ago, I got asked a question. Looking back on my career 30 years from now, what would be my biggest accomplishment at Oak Hill? And it was a pretty easy answer. I said two things. I said, number one, the relationships I would form with all the members, but number two, to watch my assistants move on to head professional positions. Very fortunate that two of my assistants this past year, within the last few months, have gotten head professional positions. Brad McCluskey just went to Wannamoisett in Rhode Island, and Eric Mabey just got the head professional job at the Country Club of Pittsfield. So again, that's the goal for us, is to bring interns in, to move them into the golf shop, and then to move our assistants on to head professional positions. That's the goal. Moving forward here from the next slide is something that I've put a lot of thought in. It's about an 18-page guide to quality service packet that I give all our current and new employees. We talk a lot about exceeding expectations here at Oak Hill, and how do we do that? Well, we can only do that if we set the expectations, set the bar, and so that our staff can jump over that bar. One of the first things that you'll notice about the book is right up front I put embracing Oak Hill's past and history. One thing that we do for all our staff is, prior to their first day of work, we send them a kind of a 4 or 5 page history of the club. We have them read it, and then upon their arrival to the club, we have them take a quiz, and they have to pass the quiz before they can begin to work. I believe firmly that it's important to embrace the tradition and always to think about the future, but protect the brand as well. And so hope all of you do the same thing. I think it's important to make sure that your staff knows the history and tradition of your club, and that way they can pass that on to guests that may have questions. Again, going through the book here, what you'll notice on the left-hand side here is we have what I call our golf operations vision, and it's built upon our mission statement. Our mission statement's kind of in that blue box, and you'll see that I pulled some key phrases out of our club's mission statement, and I put them over into the golf operations vision, and then we described what that actually means for us. And I'll just go to one really quickly. You're talking about highest quality services. Our welcoming nature will set the customer service standard. We'll anticipate the needs and constantly exceed our members' and guests' expectations. So while our golf operations vision is based on the mission statement, it is not the mission statement in itself. Again, I think it's important for the staff to buy into this and make sure that they understand it, where you're trying to go for the future. Again, right up front in the book, you'll see that safety is important here at the club. We do offer CPR training for our staff, and unfortunately, we've had to use it in the last year or so. So hopefully, you have some sort of safety procedure that you have in your training for your staff as well, and then they're able to pass that on to people in need. I can't tell you how important that is. Moving forward, there's a phrase here on the top left that I want to talk about: a culture of continuous improvement. While at Augusta National, we talked about this daily. Obviously, we're known for our golf course, but we're also known for our service and how we could get better. And that's one thing that I'm trying to bring to the club here. Craig Harmon did a fantastic job being here for 42 years, and what we're trying to do now is change a little bit of a culture. And people ask me what's the hardest part about your first year on the job as being a head professional. It's really changing your vision for the future, your culture of service. And one phrase that we thought about in a room all together is the phrase right in the middle there, where it says everything about Oak Hill has to be the best, and if it isn't, we'll improve upon it every year until it is. Again, we're not perfect, and we don't pretend to be, but if you have a common phrase like that everyone can buy into, I think it really helps your staff understand where you're trying to go. Part of our training program is protecting the Oak Hill brands. I think it's important that we talk about this and talk about how important the logo is and how you should act outside of the club when you're wearing the logo. Even when you're not wearing the logo, you're representing Oak Hill or wherever else you may be working. And so it's certainly important to talk about that and to let them know that you represent the club in and outside of work. Patrick, I think that's something that you would agree with as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. How many times I'm sure everybody here can relate to when they ran into a member at the grocery store or something like that. And or you've been out to dinner. You're always on stage. That's the way I always looked at it. And you want your staff to feel the same way and have that pride.
That's really good. And some of the research that I've done here, I've done research from some of the companies that are known for their customer service, and Disney does a great job training their staff. They have history and traditions. They talk about the brands. They do a fantastic job setting expectations for their staff. And then also Nordstrom's does it as well. One thing I'll hit on a little bit later is we have a library here at the club that our employees can check out books on either service or leadership, and I think it's important for you to have that at your club as well. Moving forward, we talk about our quality standards here. Again, these are kind of the same as what we had at Augusta National. You can see that there's 4 big ones: appearance, caring attitude, professionalism, and accessibility. You can read those later on if you like. I'm not going to go through them all, but those are our quality standards that we look for when hiring staff and training staff. This is something that I think Walt Disney does a great job of. Moving forward, we talk about when you're talking about training staff, it can be kind of boring, but and kind of monotonous sometimes. But it's important that sometimes people don't know how to greet a person, whether it's in person or on the phone. And sometimes you have to go over this stuff, and we take it for granted sometimes that people know how to do it, but you'd be surprised at how many people don't know how to do it the right way. So, I'm not a big fan of being a service robot, saying the same thing every time to someone. I think you need to let your personality come out a little bit. But you also need to set some standards of how they should at least greet a guest, and I'll move forward here.
Well, I think, something on there, Jason, is that it has to be genuine, and if you're,
correct,
like you say, a service robot, if you're like a robot, and you sense that, at other places where you're like, these people are just going through the motions, and you don't want that at your facility. I'm sure that everybody on this call doesn't want that. You want people to feel like they're, that they are truly welcome. It's not just the greeting you get when you go to, Applebee's or something like that. And you do, but there is a way to say things. And I know you got that in here somewhere, and I used to do this. I had a sheet at my backdrop that I called it the language of hospitality. And it was, and I saw you did the same thing in here somewhere where it was like, use this phrase, not this phrase, so instead of saying, no problem, you say my pleasure or something. There's a certain language to it that can have a different, I guess give you a different feeling when you're talking to people. So anyways, thought that was interesting.
That's exactly right. And we do have that in here, and we will show that to you. When you're talking about exceeding expectations, as I mentioned, you need to set expectations for your staff. One of our seminars that we did, and I'll hit on some of the seminars that we do for our Oak Hill University in just a little bit. We did a seminar on this compass here that you can see on your screen, where you have your needs, your emotions, your stereotypes, and your wants. Again, some of this stuff is based on what Disney does, but you need to understand what your basic needs are for when people come to your facility, and such as golf balls or caddies and so forth. But what do they really want? They want the best caddies. They want the best selection of golf balls. They want the best golf clubs to rent. So in order to exceed expectations, the staff needs to understand how to turn needs into wants. They also need to understand how to turn negative stereotypes into positive stereotypes. And we did a little seminar on some of the negative and positive stereotypes of Oak Hill. Some of the positive stereotypes is our condition of our golf courses. We're fortunate to be ranked high up in the Golf Digest ratings. Some of our negative stereotypes is we're a busy club, and sometimes it's hard to get a tee time here for members. So we need to make sure that we know what those stereotypes are, both positive and negative, and how we can change those. And then one thing that we've learned, and I think you would agree with this, I've played golf at one of the best golf clubs in the country, and I had a caddy that wasn't great. And what do I always remember about that experience? It wasn't how great the golf course was or how friendly the staff was. It was how bad the caddy was. And feelings and emotions are what people remember the most about an experience. And so, just think about that. Think about how fragile it is that our reputation is on the line every time a member or guest has an experience with our staff, and how that is fragile. So really push hard on your staff to understand that for 100 years of great service, one instance can ruin that. An emotion,
I think that's
can leave a lasting impression.
Sorry,
Go ahead, Patrick.
I just thought that was interesting there. When you think about the different points of contact, in each staff member, and how important everybody is to that experience. That like you said, the caddy. When I was at Kinloch, we used our caddies for a lot. We were trying to develop relationships with them because they were spending so much time with our members and guests that they knew so much. So that total team environment, and whether it's at the person at the bag drop, and I've always thought that the golf industry was sort of backwards the way things were set up, in that you're as far as your pay scale, you've got probably the people in the lower end of the pay scale are the people that are greeting the members and guests out front. And I'd like to spend a lot of time at the bag drop, but everybody is really important when the whole experience comes around. In my experience, anyways, I thought that
absolutely. And what we do is we have an organizational chart, and we try to spend at least an hour with every new employee, myself, talking about all this stuff on top of the Oak Hill University, but the stuff that I think is important when you get hired. And I take the organizational chart and I just flip it upside down, and I say, look, in my opinion, this is how it should look, and this is the importance, and it drives home the fact of how important their job really is, even if they may not think so. In my opinion, it's utterly important, and that's a great point that you bring up, Patrick. In our training information here, in our quality service packet of information, the next few pages are just stories that I found online of companies that have done an exceptional job of exceeding expectations. And when staff starts reading these, it hopefully for me it allows them to think outside the box, and to think about how they can exceed expectations here for our members and our guests. So I think that was important to put it in there. It's on the right-hand side of the page there, and I'm going to flip the page, and it's on the left-hand side there. And Patrick, what you were saying now, when you look at our information here, you can see the 7 deadly service sayings. What people say, don't say these, and try these instead. It does make a difference. I catch myself saying some of these, and you'll be surprised how many times you catch your staff saying these, and they just may not know better. Yeah. So unless you're training them in the right things to do, it's important to go over these. How you greet and how you also say goodbye to a guest. I think Chick-fil-A does a great job. I used to live in the South and eat Chick-fil-A sometimes, and I think the Cathy family's done a fantastic job of creating a culture of just great service sayings. You never hear their employees saying the wrong thing. And no. So it's good to look at some of these companies and how they do it, because they do it better sometimes than what we do. And
well, I think it's important, in anything you do, especially that you look outside of the bubble of golf, for some of these things. And we've had people from Chick-fil-A actually come and speak at a club that I've been at before, and that was where I started thinking about that language of hospitality, because they always say my pleasure. And it might be a little bit overdone, because I think you can overdo it a little bit, but
sure.
I've had members say, like, come to me and say, your staff member, he said no problem, and that I was like, well, what's the big deal? And he was like, well, why would it ever be a problem? And I started thinking, I'm like, you're right. I mean, why would you say no problem? I mean, it's not. Why would it be a problem? We're here for them, and it kind of got me thinking about how that. Just the words that you use can have an effect on that experience. But I think it's important to look outside. You're looking at Chick-fil-A here, and you had Ritz-Carlton. I mean, I went through the Ritz-Carlton training when I was at Carmel Country Club, and that was unbelievable. And the way that they empower people. Anyways, it's all good stuff.
Absolutely, and I think that's a great idea. I mean, you look at some of these companies that I've listed here, and these are all companies that are not in golf. We could list some golf companies that do a great job, but I think it's important to look outside of golf in general and look at some of the other companies that do it well from a customer service standpoint and from a training standpoint. And all of these companies listed here do a great job. Moving forward, as far as training goes, this is something I think that gets often overlooked, is how to deal with complaints. I can tell you that being a busy club here at Oak Hill, we do get complaints. It's not always daily, but sometimes it is. And we need to make sure that we educate our staff in how to deal with those. An interesting little tidbit here that I got was only 4% of the customers that have a service problem actually complain about it. So, if you get a complaint, chances are that it's a much bigger problem than what you think. So, I always think about that. Boy, if someone complained about something, there's 25 times as many people that aren't complaining about the same thing. So it's important to take all complaints, treat them as a gift, That's what we try to do with our staff is and take ownership of it. But list the steps for your staff and how to deal with it. And specifically, you can see that we have a 7-step process here at the club. It's on the right-hand side of the page there. Be an active listener, offer a sincere apology, own it. You wouldn't believe how many times someone just takes it and then doesn't write it down, doesn't pass it on. Fix the problem and report the complaint, and make sure you follow up. So these are all kind of 7 steps for our what we call service recovery, because we feel that anytime there's an issue like this, that we can recover from it and actually make it better. One other thing that's interesting is that most people, when they complain about something, they don't have an issue with what actually happened. Their issue is with how the staff dealt with the complaint more than the actual issue that happened. One little quote that I love there that we put in there is the customer is not always right, but the customer is always the customer. So never forget that. We don't pretend that they're always right, because we know they're not sometimes, but they are always the customer, and we got to remember that. So make sure you educate your staff on how to deal with complaints, because unless you're a perfect company, you're going to get them.
Well, I think that term that you use there, service recovery, which I used in my operation too, and that's so important. And I think that something I read sometime, and I have to go back and find it, but it was a certain percentage of people that claim that they loved a company or their experience was the best was after a service recovery opportunity that the staff handled the situation and went above and beyond in that service recovery. So you go through it every day in the golf operation. I think somewhere in here I read where wrong set of clubs went into the bag, into the car. The guy got the Buffalo playing a tournament, and everything you do, and that kind of goes to the Ritz-Carlton training as well, where they empower their employees. They actually I want to say it's the Ritz-Carlton gives like every employee a certain amount of money. It's something like $2,500 like every day that they can spend to not that they do it frivolously, but to do things to provide great experiences for their guests. But that empowers them to do things like, hey, I'm going to hop in the car and take those clubs to the Country Club of Buffalo and take them out to the member on the golf course or something like that. That's that service recovery. I'm sure everybody in this on this call can relate to the things that you do on a daily basis to recover from certain things. So I think it's great to have that outline there. This is how you do that. I like that.
Absolutely. And if you look on the bottom left of the page there, we do empower our employees to use good judgment. It's, in my opinion, a lot of times when you're at a place and the frontline employee has to go to their manager to get a problem solved. At that point, you've kind of lost me already sometimes. So as long as the issue isn't so large that it needs to be dealt with by myself or one of my assistants, we let our golf service center staff or our caddies make it right, and I back them behind it as long as they had the customer in mind when they were making their decision. You can't really go wrong, I don't think. So great point there, Patrick. It is the Nordstrom and the Ritz-Carlton way of empowering your employees, and I like the rule number 1 that Nordstrom uses there. Use good judgment in all situations. There will be no additional rules. I kind of like that.
Yeah.
Moving forward, again, we have legendary stories of service recovery. The wrong bag equals first place right there. That is something that happened to us last year and how we recovered from it. Then there's an example of what Amazon did below that. Getting into Oak Hill University, this packet here is part of our Oak Hill University. Again, kind of modeled off of what Cameron Weeb did down at the Everglades Club. But we were doing the same thing at Augusta National. We just didn't have a branding for the title of it. One thing that we did last year is we brought our first intern class in. We call them apprentice golf professionals, and they work in our golf service center. They take a big part in our Oak Hill University along with our assistant professionals. I do have a example of what we're doing this year in the following slides. one thing that we're going to do this year, Patrick, it was such a big hit that we're going to allow our other staff, non-PGM or PGA professionals, to attend these seminars as long as they're able to, and it doesn't affect their work schedule. So any golf operation employee can attend these, and they're very well put together. Most of them are PowerPoints. Sometimes they're roundtable discussions. A lot of times the roundtable discussions actually work out the best for us. We get a lot of ideas flowing, and sometimes great things come out of those. So you can see that some of our seminar topics include, in career development there, you got goal setting, resume building, portfolio, and interviewing. So we have basically 6 different areas: career development, golf instruction, leadership, retail operations, tournament operations, and above and beyond. We feel that, doing some charity work and your playing ability is important and rounds you out as a golf professional. Again, we'll hit our 2015 seminars in the upcoming slides. Moving forward, this is part of our library. You can see these are books that our staff can check out and read. And I feel that if you have these books in your library, maybe not the Oak Hill history book, maybe your own history book, but if you have these other 8 books, you can't really go wrong. Your staff's going to get it right most of the time. Most of these deal with customer service, which, let's be honest, that's the business we're in anyways. I think it's important to have some sort of resource or library for your staff to access. I don't know if that's something you've done or not.
Well, I had a certain book that I liked. That was called The Simple Truth of Service, and it was a lot of it was Ken Blanchard was I don't know if he was the author, but he was in it. It was a smaller book. It was just like 10 stories, very easy to read, and it was really cool. One of them was about this. You probably heard this story about Johnny the Bagger before. Well, if not, you should check it out. But it's a book called Simple Truth of Service. But I think having the library is a great idea. I would do this, just hand them out to my staff, every once in a while, and hug your customer and things like that. I had those in my office, so I guess I had a little bit of a library. But I think actually, with you probably taking it to a new level here, which is is great. And then one thing I think that I don't know if you thought about this, Jason, or if you would do it, but I mean, would you ever require this to be read, like as kind of like an advancement in there, through the Oak Hill University? Yes, checked off. I've read that book. Do you guys do that, or?
We have done that. We're doing it with Raving Fans right now, so another Ken Blanchard book, and the Oak Hill University. But I think that's a great idea, requiring it to be part of graduating from Oak Hill University. You can see that what we do also when if I go back to the previous slide here, there's a little picture here. We do certificates too, like a diploma. When you go through all the education and you do your final presentation at the end of the season, we give you a diploma. It's an Oak Hill University diploma. The guys really like that.
Nice.
We frame it for them, and hopefully they hang it on their wall. But it gives them something that they feel that they've accomplished. But I think that's a great idea, Patrick. If we require actually more reading, a lot of our staff, when they're going through their goals, they're trying to get better at teaching and golf instruction and these types of things, and we require them to read some books in those areas. But I think you can't go wrong if you require them to read some customer service books as well.
Well, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, the business of service and hospitality. I think if anybody in this business hasn't realized that yet, that golf is just a commodity. It's just like Ritz-Carlton. I mean, they're in service and hospitality. That's their business. Their commodity is, renting out rooms. They just happen to do a great job of, creating an experience. And that's, I think, my focus was always what I could do around service, and the other stuff was like, hey, we have golf tournaments, we have the instruction, but it's all about the experience for the members. So I think that's great.
I like that term, Patrick. Golf is a commodity here. I like that a lot. Our last page
I stole that from I got it. Phil Owenby said that to me. Kinlock. He coined that phrase to me. I'm sure somebody else has said it, but that's where I.
That's a good one. I like that one a lot.
Yeah.
Our last page is basically a summary of all the steps in the book. So again, when you're talking about training the staff, when I go to, I'll go back here. This is part of the requirement for training. Going through this with us, it's part of our first stage of Oak Hill University. Is going through this. It's probably about a 2-hour class to go through this entire packet, if not more. And we require all our professional staff and our part-time staff to understand this and to buy into it. They sign off that they've read it, understand it, and we put that on file so that if anything ever comes up and they said, well, why didn't you ever tell me that? Well, we can refer back to the signature and the date and say, well, we did talk about this. Another thing that we do here is when we're recruiting for our outside staff or for our apprentice golf professional staff or interns, we do a trifold. It's a way for us to brand our program. When we go, to the PGA show or we're going to, maybe some of these job fairs at some of these PGM schools, we do this, and what it does is it kind of shows our program. It talks about guidelines for being part of the program. You can see right in the middle there, it's very small, but it talks about the history of the club. We talk about our vision, and we talk about our expectations when you get hired. So this has been a nice way for us to recruit PGM students. So I encourage you, if you haven't done something like this, to try to do a trifold. Moving forward, this is our seminars, our Oak Hill University seminars this year. You can see they're kind of in order of the way they're going to go. We haven't put dates on them yet because we're still working through those. We start these basically in May and run them through October. We try to do them on Mondays when we don't have outings, when most of the staff can get some time off. You can see that the first one is golf operations orientation. You can see that the number 2 bullet there is our guide to quality service. That's that whole packet that I just went through. So we hit that one right on the nose. Another thing we do for our training program is for our PGM students, we give them an assistant golf professional to be their mentor for the season. So we have 4 assistants, we have 4 interns. It works out really well. It's kind of like a big brother or big sister type of program. And it allows the apprentice to feel like they can go to someone without always having to go to me, and it works out really well. And it takes it gives the assistants a sense of ownership too of developing staff, which they'll have to talk about that when they go through the interview process for head professional jobs. We hit golf instruction really quick, roundtable discussion. We feel it's important to talk about that PGM students struggle in that area of understanding how to teach. We also hit fitting and club repair real early because they do a lot of that here at the club, especially club repair. We talk about merchandising really quick, and you can see that each seminar has a leader. So, for example, I do the first one. The fitting and club repair is done by our director of instruction. Our director of retail does our merchandising one. Brooke and Ballard, our senior assistant professional, he's TPI certified. He does the 5th one there. Another thing that we're doing this year from Oak Hill University seminar standpoint is inviting guest speakers. We've got Luke Reese and Brooke McKenzie coming in from Shoes. They're going to talk about their company and how it's become successful. I've got J.J. Weaver, the head professional at Augusta National, talking about setting goals, how important it is to set goals and how you do that. We have a rules seminar by one of our members, USGA rules official and member of the RNA. We do live lessons. We also think it's important, and this is one I'm excited about this year. We have one of our members has volunteered. He's a financial advisor to talk about, especially from a PGM apprentice and an assistant professional standpoint, how to build a budget, how to live on a budget, on a fixed income. How do you pay off student loans? As we all know, that it takes a while to kind of get to that next level in the golf business, and you have to pay your dues, and for a lot of that time, you're not going to make a lot of money. but you still have a lot of debt, and so I think it's important to know how to kind of pay off that debt and how to live on that fixed income. So we're excited about that one. Resume and portfolio building is a great one, and then we do a end of the year golf season wrap up. Usually we give a project to our apprentice professionals, and they do a PowerPoint presentation for us, and we give them a grade, and then they pass and they get their diploma. So you can see that there's basically 12 seminars this year. Again, we try to hold them on Mondays, so we can't do it every Monday, but this will go from May through October. And then the lessons and stuff, those are ongoing. Those training programs.
Well, I think what's really good about that, Jason, I just wanted to mention, I thought what was really neat about that, what you were just talking about, is you're investing, not only in their golf career, but you're also, on a personal level, with the personal finance there, that's huge. I mean, if somebody had done that for me a long time ago, I probably would be in a different situation now. But I mean, for an employee to get that from their employer, that's like, to me, that just speaks volumes about what you're doing. I think that's unbelievable. So good job. Kudos.
Yeah, thanks. And again, we're getting these ideas from what other people are doing out there too. And I think that might have been a Cameron Weeb idea there. So he's doing some great things.
Jason, real quick, we had a question from Alan Carter, who's at Edmonton Country Club, and he wants to know about, are staff paid for these seminars, or is it just part of their salary and hourly staff? Is there any kind of pay or incentive for them to come to these?
Great question. To be part of our PGM program, we do pay them 40 hours a week, but part of the requirement of coming to work for me is taking part in the Oak Hill University, and for the most part, these are non-paying seminars. This is our way of giving back to them, and our assistant professionals do not get paid for doing these either. It's part of they're paid on salary, and this is just part of what it is to be on my staff. And then anyone that's not a PGM professional or an assistant golf professional, this would be on their own time. So most of this is on their own time. And one thing I would hope is that the staff would just want to do this, and that you wouldn't have to pay them to be a part of this. But that's a great question. I'm very fortunate that I have staff that work for me that buy into this program and want to be part of this and not get paid for it.
Mm-hmm. Sure. I mean, I'm sure that there's a balance there, and like you said, I mean, you want the right people. I mean, I think it goes back to, if you hire the right people, then that may not be the issue. But I mean, look, I mean, everybody knows that certain individuals are going to be like, okay, what's in it for me to come in on a Monday, and do that? So you got to be ready to answer that question. But thanks, Alan. Appreciate that question.
Sure, and just to follow up on that is, the leader is always required to be there. So the leader of any of these seminars is required to be there. If an assistant professional happens to be off that day, it's not a requirement, but it's strongly encouraged that they do show up. But it's not a requirement.
Yeah.
Moving forward, this is something that we did at Augusta National, and this is what JJ is going to be doing his seminar on this year for us. What we do is, before all the staff arrives for the season, we tell them to give us 3 goals that they're going to have for the entire season. And this is one of our interns this year, Greg. I think he's a Penn Stater, if I'm not mistaken. I really haven't had a chance to look over these, but one thing that's important when you're giving yourself or giving your staff goals is that they complete action steps and finish dates. You can see that here he's got a goal of shadowing 10 lessons with 10 different members. Most of this will be done with our director of instruction. But you can see that he's got specific dates that he wants to get these by, and when you set dates, you can measure how you're doing. And so I highly encourage you to, for your staff, is to maybe do something like this. One thing that you'll notice, or that I noticed in giving staff goals for the season, is that they had too many goals, and they were too ambitious. So like I'd give our staff these sheets, and they come back with 10 different goals for the season, and it's not realistic between the work schedule and things. So we limited to 3 goals for the season, realistic goals, and set some deadlines there. So we may tweak this one a little bit. Maybe the action steps could be a little bit more detailed, a little too vague for me looking at this one. But at least he's got something there, and it gives us a starting point for when he shows up. We'll adjust these when he shows up in May.
Right.
So that's about all I've got as far as what we do here.
Yeah, I think this is
at Oak
really
Hill.
Good. Yeah, Jason, your goal planner, and I think it's important to set like you talked about earlier, setting expectations, but having completion dates to goals and tasks. And one thing I used to do just on a daily basis was I'd have I called it the pick 6. And I would, beginning of my day, I would write out 6 things on my pad that I had to get done that day, that no matter what, I was going to do those 6 things. So, we all get going 10 different directions. And, at the end of the day, you're like, I didn't get anything done. So, things like that I think are important. But with this, putting that finish date on it. And then, that can always be altered depending on what happens. But you got to put an expectation on completion time for these things. So I think that's important.
Yeah, and the other thing you'll notice there is we have some considerations. I mean, obviously you got your work schedule. He's got some, volume of lessons, just availability. So, that those dates are flexible, but you got to make sure that if you do miss one, that you put a new date on it so that you have a goal. I think we have some questions, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, we do. I was going to Matt Johnson. Royal Mayfair, how do you communicate with your staff throughout the season to keep them up to speed with any changes or new initiatives?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I'll tell you what, my first year we had a lot of changes here at the club. We'd start going one way, and I noticed that the operation was maybe suffering, or the staff wasn't catching on as fast as they should. So we did have to make changes. And one thing that I'd say that I probably didn't do as good of a job my first season is having meetings. We all are in a lot of meetings, with board members and committees and things like that, but meetings with staff and finding out how things are going on their end. Because whenever you do implement a change, it is sometimes tough for the staff to catch on, especially if they've been doing it a long way. So I guess to answer the question is to schedule meetings with the staff and make sure they're aware of the direction you're trying to go.
And then Nick Muller from Country Club Lincoln, how often do you meet with each staff member throughout the busy season, and how often do you evaluate them as a follow-up?
That's great. Again, probably didn't do as good of a job my first year. With the assistants, we have a meeting at the beginning of the season. We set goals, and we try to have a follow-up meeting within a month or two of that first meeting. That's one thing that you cannot do as a head golf professional, director of golf. I don't think you can do that with all your interns and your assistants unless you're at a slow place. I know I can't do it here. That's why we do the Big Brother, Big Sister program, so that the interns are getting that feedback directly from the assistants, and the assistants are getting the feedback from me. Good question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's great. And then Dave Zibrick from Capilano up in Canada as well. How many PGM apprentices do you employ during the season?
We have 4 PGM apprentices. They work primarily in the Golf Service Center, and then towards the end of the season, we bring them into the golf shop and give them some education on the inside operations. I'm very proud that we brought one of our interns back this first season as an assistant golf professional. The way I view it is that's a 6-month job interview out there, and may the best survive. It's competitive, but the business is competitive. So that's the way I view it. Work hard, 6-month job interview. If I have an opening, we'll possibly bring you in. You still have to interview, but we'll allow you to come in and interview.
And that's one thing that, Jason's at a facility. It's 36 holes. I mean, you got a, what do you, 6, 7 month season. You're doing 40,000 rounds of golf, maybe something like that.
Right.
Yeah. So that's a busy place, and things like this obviously are important, but even down to the clubs that are 18 holes with 15,000 rounds of golf or whatever. I mean, you've got to have all these things that you just outlined here, that whole program, and then, it just sets it up for success and accountability within your staff. So, I think that's important to understand, is that you can't look at this and say, well, this doesn't really apply to me, because it doesn't matter. I mean, I've been at each level. I've been at the 10,000 rounds. I've been at the 50,000 round club, and it's all the same. I mean, dealing with staff, to me, anyways. I don't know how you feel about that, Jason, but I think it's
no. I agree. I mean, I've been at some slow clubs, high service clubs, and it doesn't change. The only thing that changes is the amount of time management you have, and for anyone that's listening that's an assistant professional, I mean, that's one of the toughest things about being a head professional, is managing your time between your staff and what the members require of you, and then meetings and things like that. That's the biggest challenge, I think.
Yeah. Well, let me jump to a couple more slides, and then we'll open it up for any discussion. Jason, thanks for that. That was great, and I know you hopefully you have a few more minutes for this. But
yeah, I'm good. I'll stay on.
Yeah. Perfect. I just wanted just a couple slides here that I put together, talking about the learning process. So I think it's important. It's just like with instruction, where you got to learn how people learn. I mean, I think that there's a process to learning, and in that process, you have to know, each individual, how they are going to receive information. But if you look at this process, about the communication, and then their experience, and then practicing these, the things that Jason has in his presentation here, getting the feedback and adjusting, and then expanding your skills, and then just keeping that circle going. I think it's important to have good visualization of that, and then knowing how each individual learns is important. So I went through and did some research on best practices for putting together a staff training program, and I just put some bullet points through here, about the communication, which obviously, if you look back on what Jason just did, I mean, there's a lot of communication that goes to their staff, and a strategy for sure. He's got a pretty directed strategy. Defining success, having the criteria to define success, which, you see that in that presentation. And just so everybody knows, as long as Jason, I'm sure that you'd be okay with this, but if I want to forward this presentation to everybody, and I'm also going to have this on the website later today, and it'll be up, so if anybody wants to review it. Support systems, the structure with policies and procedures. So not just you can't just train them and then throw them out there to the wolves. You've got to have the support system. Utilizing different platforms. I mean, I did a lot of, and I don't know if you've done anything with this, Jason, but videos, and put them on YouTube, and just do staff training videos, whether it was how to meet and greet somebody, or whether it was a screen share or a screen application. I was showing them how to use Jonas or something like that. Just having those training videos that they could always go to. Just have like a YouTube channel. It doesn't cost you anything.
I think that's a good idea. I have not done that, but I think that's a brilliant idea.
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of platforms, especially with the technology now, that you can utilize for training purposes. And obviously learn by doing. I mean, that's a no-brainer. That's how you're going to learn. Have a training plan, which we just saw Jason's plan there. That was that great. The seminars, incorporating into your orientation, so you're starting that training right from the get-go. Promoting the continuous learning. Having it so it explains your culture, which I think if you read through what Jason went through, you'd understand what the culture is at Oak Hill. The positive reinforcement, which I'm sure everybody understands that. I mean, I was big on just trying to build my people up instead of, but I'm sure there were times where I didn't come across that way. But then accountability, that's that goal sheet that Jason had there. You got to establish the accountability within your staff. So those are some best practices we saw there. Actually, Jason, let's go back. I'm going to stop at right here. We got a couple more questions. Bobby Jacks from Baton Rouge. Are you able to send a copy? Oh, yeah. Okay. Bobby, I'll send that on. And then Lynn Hunter from Kenwood. Jason, do you have any staff reward system throughout the year to reward great service? That's a good question.
It's a good question. What we do is, what we're going to do this year is have kind of, it's almost like what they do, I guess Ohio State does or something like that, where you give kind of, we're not going to have helmets here or anything like that, but for something that goes above and beyond, we'll have like some sort of sticker system or something, and I think that's a great idea, Lynn. And we're still working through that, but yes, we will. One thing that we've done with our staff that works in our inside golf shop staff is we've rewarded them based on meeting budgets or exceeding budgets in the golf shop. But I'm trying to come up with a way for our golf service center staff, our outside staff, to be rewarded as well. We do have things like a beginning of the year kind of get together that I pay for, and an end of the year get together too. But as far as an ongoing thing, we're working through that. So good question. If you have any ideas, I'd love to hear them.
Yeah, when we open it up here, maybe we'll get some ideas from the guys. And then just saw some of the major, I guess, mistakes to avoid and when you're training. So forgetting the why, and getting too focused on the how people are doing it instead of the why, so that you're making sure they understand the why. Certainly, take a lot of time, so don't rush the learning process. It's I think Jason earlier you mentioned, it's monotonous. I mean, training can be monotonous. It's an everyday thing. It just never goes away. I mean, you're going to be training every day and almost every second of the day while you're on the job. Using the wrong trainer. So just, obviously Jason has some great people coming in to talk, just make sure that you're, who you are, who you're bringing in to do those things, which I think is important. And you notice that schedule that Jason wasn't, he did, I think you had one presentation was yours, the rest of them were your staff. I mean, I think that's great for the buy-in, for the empowerment of your staff, but also, you're not the one that you're not the one that's always delivering the message. It's other people, it's outside people. And a lot of times that means more than coming from, your superior. And then missing opportunities.
Following up on that, the using the wrong trainer. We did that this past year, where someone's shadowing someone, and they're shadowing someone that's not a good worker. Good. That's a really good point right there. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, that's a good. I mean, I was thinking more of the outside person, but you're right. I mean, it could be, you're pairing up the mentors there. Well, if you don't have a good mentor, you're probably not gonna, succeed with that person that's learning from them. So, anyway, some ideas there. So in this time, I mean, if anybody wants to chime in, I mean, I'm going to open it up for any discussion, or if you have any questions that you want to do through the chat, certainly we want to be able to take any more questions. And let's see if I can get this. Jason, you still there?
I am.
Yeah, I lost you there for a second, but trying to figure out how to get anybody. But if anybody has any questions, I having an issue here opening this up. But if we can go to the chat, and I appreciate everybody putting these in. Tom Mackey did have a question there. Did you already get that one, Jason? Do you know?
No. Is there a test that follows these seminars? There's not so much a test that follows the seminars as there is for the history of the club. I think that's a great idea, Tom. It's something I'll look into.
Yeah, I was curious about that as well. Like, how do you, some of the, I guess not the follow up, but the testing on that. That's a tough one. When you're it's probably, you're going to see whether they're getting it or not, or understanding the culture. I think, and is that really what you're trying to do here, Jason? I mean, that you're trying to get them to understand the culture, right? I mean, with this training.
Yeah, people ask me, what was one of the toughest things about the job the first year, and it's certainly, changing a culture. We can change cosmetically, the way we set up the range or the way we display golf carts, things like that. But changing a service culture is by far the toughest, I think.
I completely agree with you. I've been through that. If you had to gauge, so you're going into your second season now, if you had to gauge where you're at with getting, 0 to 100, where are you at with where you want to be from a culture standpoint?
Yeah, good question. We've had a lot of staff turnover, and it's been the opportunity for me to bring in people that have gone through an extensive hiring process with me, and I feel very comfortable with, and so definitely starting to feel better about it. Are we there yet? No, but hopefully by the end of this season, we'll be even closer to the end goal of being a service-oriented club.
Right.
I think we're getting close, but once you start getting kind of the people you want in place, you start feeling a little bit better about the operation as a whole.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Well, Jason, I really want to thank you for being with us. That was an outstanding presentation, very, very valuable information there. So I'm sure everybody else here would also say that. Hold on, we did have, let's see, a couple more questions here coming in.
Sure.
Matt, how did you get the existing staff to buy into the new culture you're setting? You may have already answered this question, but
yeah. Matt, great question. It's two parts. I hate to say this, but the ones that bought in are still here, and the ones that didn't are no longer working here. Never like letting anyone go, but sometimes you just have to.
Yeah.
And Bobby Jack.
Who hires and trains the outside staff?
Yep. So last year, we did from the golf shop standpoint. It was very tough to manage because our golf service director didn't work for us any longer. So I didn't want to jump the gun halfway through the season and bring in the wrong person. So I waited till the end of the season. We did a very extensive hiring process that the Golf Business Network actually helped with. And we got someone that we feel very comfortable with. So he's actually going to do most of the training and hiring for the outside staff this year. He has got a title of Golf Service Director / Caddy Manager. Good questions.
I'm sure you guys all stay. That you and the professional staff spend plenty of time with them as well, though.
We do. Especially going over this type of stuff.
Yeah.
Good. Well, Patrick, I can't thank you enough.
Yeah, thank you, Jason. I really appreciate it. It was outstanding. Again, this is going to be on the website, so anybody wants to revisit it, and certainly can follow up with questions to me. But thanks, Jason. That was outstanding. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.
All right. Talk to you.
Bye.